Yeah.
Okay, great. So, yeah, we've got about, 15 minutes or so. I'm going to try to help you with one specific scenario and see what we can extract from it. Why don't you get us started by telling me, um, yeah, what you're looking for, what you're looking to explore.
I think it could be generally, well, it was two things. Either one was just improving the forehand throw in a longer distance, like improving the length of it. And
Mhm.
then I guess the second thing could just be general decision making, maybe on the end zone line. You're close to the end zone and just uh yeah, that throwing within 100% throws or within your capability. Um,
Okay,
Probably
great.
the capability thing for the forehand thing, particularly because it's just like, oh, that person's open, and then you can't throw that far. Or the
Mhm.
blade, you try to throw forehand too hard, and then blade's open.
Okay, so the two possibilities would be basically like forehand, hucking, like mechanics and advice, and then the second one would be decision making on near the end zone. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So I think the one that we'll have probably greater insight and progress with in 10 minutes would be, I mean, I can give some general advice on forehand, blah, 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 but I think there might be more opportunity uh,
Yeah.
for figuring something out in a 10-minute call when we're talking about decision making near the end zone, especially if you
Yeah.
have
So,
a specific example in mind, like an example from
um,
your life, you on the end zone.
so yeah, we can focus on the second one. Specific example. Yeah, I don't. I mean, just like when you're on the end near the end zone line, and you probably should have just swung it again and take the
Right,
easy reset instead of trying to
right,
force a throw
right.
into traffic.
Yeah. So can you remember a specific example from like where you have had this happen? It can be recent. I mean, if it's recent, it's nice, but even if not, can you remember a specific scenario for when you were in that position?
Um, yeah, I get. I may not as vividly as normally, but just yeah, like maybe a beach nationals. Just could have just swung it like the swings just trying to like embed like change it from being able to see this is not this is a 50-50 throw, so I'm just going to swing it and
Right.
reset it.
So that's what we're gonna do. So, but
Yeah.
so there's a process to this. So what we're gonna do, like what we're trying to do here is we're trying to uncover the primary source of error. Like, is it there's a mental interference with some sort of like confidence, blah blah blah? Is it a lack of skill? Is there a different mental map that needs to occur? And then when we're really sure about like what the primary challenge is, then it's easier to fix. But it's really individual
Yeah.
to each individual person. So that's why in this particular type of coaching container, I'm not giving you theory. I'm trying to figure out for you personally what's going on, and for you personally, like what
Well,
the source of the error is and how we can fix it. So that's what we're doing, and that's why we need like a specific example is where it
yeah.
works best.
I mean, most vivid one, like recently, it wasn't on the end zone. It was just decision making in general. Like I saw somebody they were deep, and I
Okay.
tried to throw it to them, and then I realized later, like, yeah, I should have known I don't have that distance to throw. Like it
Okay.
did not. It landed short, and I had to run back towards it, didn't catch it. But just so I can vividly remember that
Okay, great.
person, like, oh, maybe it was just a turn. I pick it up. Oh, that person's wide open. I'll just try to. I'll throw it to her. Oh, and then in retrospect, it's like I definitely don't have that throw unless the wind's at my back. Like I
Uh-huh.
should have known.
Uh-huh.
And I've been trying to train myself to just dump more and let other people throw it away and
Great.
just and to see that situation. No, that's not 100% throw. It's been 50-50 that you can throw that distance, but in the moment, I don't always think
Exactly.
that.
Exactly.
And
So what
so
I
that's the moment.
Okay, great. Okay, so that sounds like a good example. Let's work with that example. And what I want to
Yeah.
do is I want to really slow it down. So I'm going to ask you a bunch of dumb questions. Okay. And
Yeah.
so and I need you to stay with me if you want to do
Yeah.
this process. So let's think about this specific example. Tell me like yeah, like how did you end up with the disc?
Yeah, I think it was a turn, or I just got a pass off of a pretty recent turn.
Okay.
And then so all the teams were kind of like close, you know, and then oh, this person is really deep. They're wide open. If I could just throw this to them, it would be pretty easy because they don't even have a defender around them.
Okay. All right, great. So what you saw then, so the next question is kind of what did you see? You saw, it sounds like you saw a bunch of players kind of near you, but then you saw this other player that was by
Yes,
themselves in the deep
yes,
space.
yes.
And like, do you remember seeing any defense? Do you remember like approximately how far away they were?
Um, 10, 20 meters. Like she was wide open, kind of running deep. Oh great, I don't even have to even put it very directly to her because she has no defender around her.
Okay.
I just need to just throw it and then she can run onto it as if I actually had
Uh-huh.
that throw.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Okay, great. So then do you remember how far away they were when you threw the disc?
um, I was probably like trying to think of the just a little over half the field.
Okay. So they
What's
were
that?
like about 40 meters away or something like that. Something like that. Half
Yeah.
field away. It's okay if you don't remember exactly. Just kind of trying
Well,
to
how
get
long
a
is the field usually? I should know
like
this. It's
70 yards, 70 meters.
yeah, yeah. That's it. Also does my head in like the yards and the meters too because I'm
Right.
American and
I just
it's
assume
funny.
they're
Anyway,
equivalent, even though they're kind of not. But so let's say like around 35 meters. You said about half field, around 35 meters, 40
yeah,
meters,
yeah, yeah.
something
A
like
little
that.
bit more than half. Yeah,
Okay, so maybe 40, 50 meters, something.
yeah. I was a
So
quarter of the field up after the end zone, and she
oh,
was
so you're like at the brick.
probably yeah. I was at the brick mark, and I was probably throwing to the other brick mark, but then
Gotcha.
it probably landed at the brick mark, but it was supposed to lead. Like she would run onto it, she would run back to it. So
Okay, so
probably
then
from
when you
brick mark to brick mark.
okay, gotcha. So when you threw it, then the trajectory was such that it would have landed on the brick mark, but you knew that the throw needed to go beyond the brick mark for her to
Yeah,
run onto it.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Okay. So next question is okay, so that's what you saw. And then do you remember so this is the strangest question. So do you remember what you felt either in the moment right before the decision to throw it or during the decision to throw?
Um, I remember the thought process was pick up the disc. I see her open and look kind of like, you know, instantaneously looking around. Oh, there's no defense. She's running deep. Um, maybe I might have hesitated just to double check, like, oh wow, she's really open. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
think I can. I'll throw this to her, and then it bladed more than I would have liked, and
Okay.
I was disappointed.
Okay. 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 So then, so great. So you gave me a good description of sort of like your thought process, even though it was really quick. Probably a lot of it was sort of subconscious. Um, so um, let me ask the question another way or give you more context. So like, have you ever like through a huck that you just like, you saw the person and you knew for sure, like there was no doubt, like this is a completion. Like you knew it before you even threw the disc. Have you ever had that happen?
Um, I throw it and well, I mean, oh, but it has to be a huck, right? Like a long
Or
one.
not even a huck. I mean, just any throw, like that feeling of like
Yeah.
you see the open thrower and you're just like, yeah, this is it. This
Yes.
is a okay, great. All right. Have you ever had the experience where you've thrown a disc and the feeling is more like oh, I hope this works, or like oh, maybe this will work? Have you ever had that
Yeah.
experience?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. So when I'm asking you like what did you feel? I mean, it could be a variety of things, right? Sometimes people might feel things like pressure, they might feel rushed. But the basic thing I'm asking though is like, was that feeling of certainty there, or was there a feeling of like a maybe, let's see, curiosity? What kind of feeling did you have, like right before the decision or right before the throw?
I think that it was. I think I might have hesitated slightly,
Okay.
and then noticed that there was nobody around her. Like it should be an easy
So would
throw
you
that way.
say, all right, okay, hold on. So would you say that you felt hesitant? So I'm looking for like feeling words, like curiosity,
I think so.
hesitation,
Yes.
fear. Okay,
Yeah.
hesitation. Okay. So a feeling of hesitation. Okay. Okay. So All right. There was a feeling of hesitation. Um, okay, so what I'm wondering is, for the distance of this throw, it seems like it was brick mark to maybe like should have been beyond the other brick mark. When
Yeah,
you're practicing this distance of throw in general, do you have that distance?
I think it's on my cusp, and that's the so so if my pivot, if I'm not set like well, then like if I'm practicing maybe, but because I've just run and picked up the disc and then maybe didn't set properly, because I've also identified that my hucks suffer terribly if I do like a little running drill where run down, catch the disc and then throw and then run back and then like I think that's the next thing. One of the big things for me to work on is like setting up the right stance after running. Um,
Hmm.
so I think yeah, that's one thing I've learned after
Okay.
doing that drill. It's like, wow, my hooks are maybe that's why, there's a quick turn and I just got the D and then you throw it away or whatever. It's like, oh, you're in for whatever reason, yeah, the
You're not
stance
having the
I'm
safe
standing.
stance.
Yeah,
Okay.
then,
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's
or
possible. Okay. Yeah, but you don't really so when you're I mean, this I don't
so
expect
maybe
you to
like
really
taking a breath or something, maybe
mm,
like take pausing or taking a breath before just to double check I have the right, I don't know, composure.
yeah,
Yeah.
possibly. What I'm wondering is if you remember, and you might not, because this would be kind of detailed, but like you can kind of sometimes we have like a proprioceptive memory, like
Yeah.
you can probably imagine or visualize or imagine like what if you're standing with the stance that you want and chucking it,
Yeah.
you can kind of have a representation in your mind maybe
Yep.
of what that feels
Yep.
like.
Yeah.
um I don't expect you to remember, but you might remember. Like, do you remember if you had that same thing when you were in this specific moment?
Um, No, I mean I don't remember my stance per se.
Sure.
I think I was more focused on watching the
Right.
throw, being disappointed that it curved in, and then being like,
That's fair.
crap, why did I throw? Because it's also like a bad habit of like
Okay.
happen again. And I mean I've been doing it less. I've been happy about that. But anyways, that was like my biggest kryptonite is like throwing it away because I do a deep throw and it doesn't come off, and it's poor
Okay.
throw.
So the is there so this is something that happens more than once where it's like you see a deep throw and you throw it, but then it's not something that it's not a throw that you actually have yet. It's not a is
Correct.
that what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got it.
Yes, yeah. I mean, there's a couple. Sometimes there's also just like, yeah, or the same with a hammer or something. It's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
that turned out to be a lot wobblier, and now it floated so much that the defense can get there. And
Uh-huh.
I probably the hammer maybe wasn't the best choice.
Uh-huh.
And if it
Okay.
had gone in straight, then but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's deviating from. But yeah, the thing that happens a lot is the poor judgment, or maybe it's like a good idea but poor execution.
Right.
And
Right. So here's like I think a core concept that I teach my athletes is like, your game IQ, your skill, like this is like the knowledge that's contained in your body and in your sports brain. So that kind of recognition of a throw where you're just like, yes, I this is a completion. Like that is like the feeling that we have when our brain has recognized the pattern, it knows that it has the appropriate skill, and then it just executes the skill kind of without thinking. And there's just like no doubt, it's just a fact that this is going to be a completion, right? That's kind of
mhm.
like when you're attempting to play like perfect ultimate. That's the kind of feeling that you're wanting, in all of your passes. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That
Now,
is.
right now, what I think some of this is like a little bit of a new hypothesis for me based on recent work I've been doing, but like sometimes I think what happens with some players, I mean, especially with like newer players, you're not a new player, but it's like sometimes the decision map is as simple as like there's an open player, I'm going to throw it. I don't think that's what's happening with you, but like that's an example of how someone might make a decision. Their whole mental map and game IQ is
Yeah,
just open player, I'll
yeah,
throw it at them. And they'll throw it at them. They don't see the defense. It's easy for them to throw into poaches because the only information they're kind of collecting or able to collect is like,
yeah, yeah,
receiver. And they just feel like
yeah.
if there's a receiver running deep, especially, they just have to throw it. Like they can't not throw it. So that's
Yeah.
what I would call sort of like a mental map. That's kind of
Mm.
like a summary of like how they're collecting information, what it means, and then what they do. So the information they're collecting is like someone's running deep. what it means is since they're the deepest person, I have to throw it, and then what they do is they throw it, and it's not really related to like they're not taking into consideration like do they actually have that throw, right? That's not part of their decision
Mhm.
making process or mental map.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then like so there's a couple of different ways to approach that. One is just like helping players realize like that's how they're making decisions, and then logically sometimes they realize that doesn't really make any sense, and then that can kind of help them to shift like, oh, like just because someone is open doesn't mean I have to throw it.
Yeah.
Like, and it kind of uncovers like some sort of like a just I'll say belief systems for lack of a better word, like, or but just like, patterns, belief system. The belief is like if someone's open, I have to throw it, right? And that's at least like how they're acting. They're acting as if they believe that, right? If you
Yeah.
bring it to conscious awareness, sometimes they'll realize like, no, I don't actually believe I have to throw it if someone's open. So I can. So then, if I realize I don't need to operate that way, then I can just choose to holster it, right? I'm not saying that's exactly what's happening with you here because you're not a beginning player, but it's like maybe something similar, right? You're seeing the thing. You're not exactly having the yeah, that's a completion feeling, and you're throwing it anyway. So you're kind of ignoring your body's information
Yeah.
about the
Well,
shift
I
the
think
choice of the
my
state.
body, like I see something and I'm like, that's a completion, but I'm ignoring the fact I haven't thought about like, huh, is this your 100%? My brain thinks it's a completion because it would be if I had
Okay.
the ability to execute that throw well. And
Uh,
had it been a little bit closer, then yes, that would be 100% completion. But because it's on that cusp or further, um, then it's not, or maybe it's a bit of a crosswind, and and that reduces my, or even a wind at my face.
right.
Then it might reduce my ability. I'm not adjusting for that or even recognizing that cusp. Um, so
Mm.
I guess that's what I'm thinking, is just changing it to trying to pause to recognize, is this at the cusp of my ability and it's going to turn into a 50-50 instead of 100%.
Uh,
um uh what is
yeah.
the weather doing?
Yeah, could be. I mean, so I think, yeah, I mean, so what we're talking about here is basically like, especially when you're working at the cusp of your skills, what you're doing is you're kind of trying, your brain is trying to collect new patterns, right? Especially as you're working on a
Yeah.
skill. So,
Yeah.
so what I'm wondering is like, it's probably, you kind of have to check in with some more data points, but it's just like, maybe your brain is actually curious. It's just like, oh, do we have this yet? Like that, maybe that's the question your brain is kind of asking. And the only way to answer that is to throw it. And then the answer is like, nope, not yet. Like, no, we don't have that distance yet. Right. And that's
Yeah.
okay. Like, that's part of the learning process. But so I think this is also maybe something to think about as you go through practices and then into performance. When you're in practice, it's okay to have some of those like, I wonder if this will work. Or are we there yet? Like those kind of curious throws, right? Where you're seeing, do you have the skill yet? But then once
Yeah.
you get into performance, what you really need is you need to be able to identify like, yes, this is the throw, or no, this is not the throw. Like, and you need to rely on that
Mhm.
sort of sense. So by the time you get to performance, ideally your brain has had enough pattern recognition where it does know. Some things that can help, as you mentioned, is like maybe a little bit of bring a little bit of awareness to the pattern so you can recognize them more quickly. Like if the common pattern is, say, when we visualize how far away this person was from you, that's part of the pattern, right? If the person is that distance, maybe they're actually too far away, right? And so if you notice, like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, like next time, oh yeah, it's always that distance. They're just too far away. But if the person starts like 10 yards in front of that and you try it and just like, oh, okay, that's a completion, right? You're just kind of becoming more aware of what the distance is that you need for your
Yeah.
receivers.
Yeah.
And then same thing with the weather. Like if you're noticing, oh, it's always when there's just like breeze upwinds that I'm not able to do these hammers, you're
Yeah.
kind of helping
Yeah.
yourself recognize patterns a little quickly,
Yeah.
more quickly, hopefully. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think practicing that the running drill where I'm slightly fatigued and then throwing, or like catching it and throwing a huck, will be better than practicing stationary hucks, because that's more game like. And that seems to be where maybe my judgment is lapsing when I'm slightly deoxygenated in the brain from running, and then not setting. You're just making that practice more game like. I think is something that, you know what I mean, like just running a
I do
bit,
know what you
like
mean.
it was just a small. Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean, it could be worth, I think if you can get that proprioceptive picture, right, you know what stance you need in order to throw it at a certain distance, right? And that's the thing that you wouldn't replicate when you're doing your sort of game like reps. Like, what does it mean to be moving and then get into that stance? What does that feel like, right? Maybe that's the
Mhm.
next step.
Yeah.
But as far as
Yeah.
in general, my general recommendation is like practicing things while you're tired to make them better is usually not what I'd recommend for a developing skill. I'd recommend
Mm.
more, making sure that you have the physical capacity to
Not be tired.
not be tired.
And
That's
yeah.
easier actually. And then because yeah, but once you have a skill, then you can sort of play with the edges. Like, what is it like? Just like I
Yeah.
could throw a forehand with even if I have a crappy grip or some stupid grip, like I can still throw the thing, right? But I couldn't do that when I was first starting. But now it's just like if I have these little errors in my form, it doesn't matter. I can still make the disc do what I want it to do. But that's not, for a beginning player, like that's not what I would recommend them practice doing.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I
Yeah.
feel like we talked about a lot of stuff here. Has this been helpful? What has been helpful and what has not been?
I think just maybe talking about it to hash out details and um to talk through, because by having this appointment, then you're analyzing exactly what happened in that particular situation, and you're being more intentional about it. Yeah, so the more you visualize things, the more you and talk about them, the more you will be aware of them in the future. And um yeah, and yeah, reinforcing of the things I might want to practice at uh practice or in a smaller, my own throwing session or whatever. Um but can you still hear me?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. But yeah, I think that was the main thing. I mean, it's fun to yeah, to bounce ideas off of somebody who has lots of ideas and knowledge. So
Nice. Okay, great. All right, cool. Well, I'll stop the recording and yeah, maybe others will find this useful too.